Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer my most humble pranams at the lotus feet of beloved Bhagwan, dearest Swami, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters. One of the greatest revolutions in the modern times has been that of the cell phone. There was a time when it was considered as the privilege of the rich and elite, but today every little vegetable vendor, whether people have 3 square meals a day or not, they definitely have a cell phone. That is how widespread it has become. That is how omnipresent it has become. Now, in the cell phone, the interesting thing is there are different people providing the services to get connected. In India, we have BSNL, Airtel, Vodafone, Tata Docomo, MTNL, Aircel, so many. The names may be different, but basically the job they do is the same. Ultimately, it doesn't matter actually with the name because their job is to connect. In this whole setup of mobile telephony, the most important unit is a tiny little thing that is present inside the cell phone, inside each individual cell phone, called the SIM card. Now, if the SIM card is missing, irrespective of how many service providers are there in the country, irrespective of how many towers are there in the region, it's of no use. What matters most is the SIM card, which is unique and which is present in each and every mobile phone. When I was thinking of this, I felt that is how it is in life also. To get connected to a source that connects the whole world, the whole universe in fact. One needs a connecting service, one needs the towers, but the most important part is a connecting piece which is within each and every individual. That internal connect, if it is missing, no matter how many temples you go to, no matter how many religions you change, no matter how many masters you go to, it will be no use, because what is most important is the SIM card within each. And just like that SIM card, this connect is highly personalized. No two SIM cards are the same. You can't have 2 SIM cards with the same number. In the same way, no two connects with God is the same. It's very unique, it's very personal, it's very individualized, it's highly personalized. No two are the same. So therefore, it doesn't make sense comparing, doesn't make sense contrasting. In fact, in many informal talks, Swami would often mention that one of the greatest pitfalls in spirituality is this, habit or the tendency to compare and contrast and measure progress and all these. What we have to realize is our connect with Swami, our connect with God. Yeah, I am calling Swami, maybe called by different names, as I said, Reliance, MTNL, BSNL, doesn't matter. But that for that connect, the most important is this SIM card within. And by Swami's grace, I have witnessed several experiences of different people. I'll be narrating a few here. Both these people whom I know very well, which emphasizes this very fact that this connect with God is a very individual and personal one, and each one will have to work for it. Each one of us will have to work and strive for it. We cannot use our wealth, our family name, where we hail from, all these as claims towards better connect to God. I'm reminded in this instance of the experience of a classmate of mine, Nikhil Kaushik. Nikhil Kaushik from Karnataka. He hails from a very, if I can say, fantastic background. His great-grandfather was Sheshagiri Rao. Sheshagiri Rao was the first priest at Prashantinilya. For those who are unaware, the way he came itself is a fantastic story. Sheshagiri Rao, an orthodox, traditional, devout Brahmin, worshipping Lord Shiva, he said, I don't want to, I am worshipping Lord Shiva and what is this now? You want me to come and bow my head before some youth? But at the same time, his family friends advised him saying that Puttaparthi is a very God-forsaken place. They were not aware that God had not forsaken Puttaparthi. But they said it's a very remote place, so at least go as an escort. Don't send two ladies alone. And therefore he came to Puttaparthi as an escort. And he had a relative's friend who was staying near Puttaparthi. So he decided that he would go and stay at that home and return. Never come to meet this Baba or anything. These were the days of the Pathamandiram. The Pathamandiram is today the Kalyana Mandapam, Pedda Venkama Raju Kalyana Mandapam near the Hanuman temple. That is where Swami's little mandir was. And he stayed at that place. He goes near the gate and the next moment he just collapses. He's unconscious. And cutting the long story short, he's unconscious for 2 complete days. And Swami says, don't worry, nothing will happen, I will take care. In fact, Swami gets him shifted to a room beside his own room. There was no medical facility available, nothing they could do. So they distrusted and the man of the house is down. So he was there for 2 days, after which when he woke up, when he arose from his unconsciousness, he just told him, you can go back to Bangalore or wherever you want, I am not leaving Puttaparthi. In fact, he resigned from his job to stay at Puttaparthi. And even to resign from his job, he did not go there to that place. And he revealed that when I came there near the gate, what I saw there was not this young boy, but my Lord Shiva with the crescent moon on his head, with the Ganga flowing down his locks, and that sight, I just could not bear the impact of that sight. And all my life I have pined and sought Shiva. Having found Shiva, do you think I am a fool to leave? And so he stayed on. He stayed on. And that was Nikhil Kaushik's great-grandfather. The interesting thing is, see, Swami did not tell him that you leave Shiva and all, now it's me. I am the latest. So you come to me. No. That is why I feel Swami is so wonderful. He knows that the SIM card in Sheshagiri Rao is tuned to the network called Shiva. So great. I will just show that this is also the same network only, don't worry. Swami never discouraged someone from worshipping their Lord of choice or God of choice. In fact, he appeared to them as that same God of choice. He did not try to swerve their loyalty or win them over. In fact, he has publicly proclaimed, I don't want to start a new religion. I want a Hindu to be a better Hindu, a Muslim to be a better Muslim. Whatever you are, become better at that, that's enough. So you see, even at that fundamental level, Swami was not wanting to change that inner connect. In fact, as late as 2009, when Swami had visited Hadshi and Mumbai, the brothers who had built that huge kshetra in Hadshi, they wanted to name it as Sri Satya Sai Kshetra. Swami said, no, name it as Panduranga Kshetra. Because in that region, that is the form with which they connect and everyone loves Panduranga. Swami could have done it, right? He could have named it after himself. He could have named it after, and it was not his wish. Everyone wished that it should be named after him. In fact, in the temple there also, he has got, in the main temple, the idols installed are that of Vithala and Rakumai. Because Swami knows it doesn't matter what the carrier is. As long as the SIM card is fine, great. And in that region, what is the SIM card? He has put that, doesn't matter at all. Because whether you know it or not, you pray to Vithala, pray to Allah, pray to Jesus, it's all coming to me only. Or pray to Swami, it's coming to the same entity. It's the same bandwidth that the government auctions to different carrier services. It's the same bandwidth through which everything travels and reaches. And not only his great-grandfather, his grandmother, Sundaramma, she was one of the first lead singers in the mandir, even from the Pata Mandiram days. On one occasion, on the Chitravati banks, there was this devotee whom Swami asked, "Where do you go to worship?" He said, "I go to Tirupati, Swami." So Swami told him, "What will you do if Tirupati comes to you?" He said, "Swami, if Tirupati comes to me, I am very happy." Then Swami just put his hand into the sand and pulled out the idol of Narayana and Lakshmi. And he said, "Here, Tirupati has come to you." So he took that idol of Narayana and began to worship it. The idol of Lakshmi was given to Sundaramma, which is Nikhil's grandmother. And she has had many incidents and experiences. You know, in those years, for about 2 or 3 years, Swami would perform the Kalyanotsavam, or the wedding ceremony of Narayana and Lakshmi. This is a common practice in many places in India, where they do Kalyanotsavam. They do Sri Rama Kalyanotsavam, Rama and Sita, the wedding. They do the wedding of Parvati and Shiva. All this at a deeper level signifies the union of Prakriti and Paramatma, the union of the individual and the Lord, the marriage. Inseparable you become. That's why in a marriage you say, "That's my other half." Of course, today they say better half, but usually the term is the other half. Because it shows that now you are no longer two but one. Only your bodies are two. So in the same way, when you get married to God, we are just saying that we are two in existence, but in reality we are the one. So Swami himself began this practice of performing the Kalyanotsavam, and Swami would do it with great drama. You know, there would be the bride's party, the groom's party, and the groom's party will get the groom. The groom is what? Here, the idol of Vishnu. And the bride's party will get the bride, the idol of Lakshmi. And just like two people getting married, that is how they would all participate in that function. You know, it would be an elaborate ceremony after which there is a feast and everything. And Sundaramma was chosen as the bride's party. She has to escort the bride and get Lakshmi. But Sundaramma was in no mood to participate in this. Because on that same day when she was coming to Puttaparthi in order to participate in this wedding, she had lost her own Mangal Sutra. Mangal Sutra is the ornament as per Bharatiya tradition that the woman wears, symbolizing the marriage. And it's considered very valuable, in many of the poorer women, this is possibly the only gold they wear. So it's very rich in every sense, a material sense, a cultural sense, a spiritual sense. And she had lost this Mangal Sutra, so she was very worried. So throughout the ceremony, she was preoccupied, she was going on wondering what happened, and she was mentally complaining to Swami. "Swami, what is this? Swami, what is this? I've lost my Mangal Sutra. Instead of talking about this here, now marrying, talking about another marriage here." And she was fully upset about that. And just before the crux of this wedding ceremony, which is when Lord Narayana ties the Mangal Sutra to Lakshmi, Swami comes to Sundaramma and says, "Sundaramma, cheer up, I'm doing all this for you." She doesn't understand. Swami says, "Now see the Mangalam, Mangala Dharanam." And Swami waves his hand and materializes the exact Mangal Sutra that Sundaramma has lost at Penukonda. And Swami whispers to her, "After this marriage ceremony, when the idols are going back, you are anyway bride side, no? You take the Mangal Sutra and it's yours only." You know, like this, so many interesting incidents. I am just giving this as a backdrop to show the lineage from which Nikhil Kaushik has descended. Otherwise, we can have an entire session on just the experiences of Sundaramma, and same with his mother and aunt, his aunt Sucharita and his mother. In fact, they have recorded it in one book called Sri Satyasai Madhura Smriti. So, all their experiences in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s are all recorded there. So basically, it is from this family that even, Dr. R.S. Padmanabhan, who used to walk behind Swami in Vrindavan, he is also part of this family. So it's a very, very rich lineage. And it was in their place that Swami first started the global Akhanda Bhajan in Bangalore. That time it was not called the Global Akhanda Bhajan, it was just the Akhanda Bhajan, which has today become global. Every second Saturday of November, all around the world, for 24 hours, people do bhajans. And Nikhil from his childhood has been in Bal Vikas, has been a good singer, has participated, has sung once in Swami's presence, has won prizes and all that. And so in 2005, he joined MBA, he became my classmate. I was not aware of any of this thing, just another brother who has joined the college, and he was aspiring to sing in front of Swami. Actually, aspiring is a wrong term. He felt it is his birthright to sing in front of Swami. After all, he is descending from this lineage, right? Everybody has been singers. Global Akhanda Bhajan, his family has been the one to start it. It's just his right that he should sing in front of Swami. So he thought that as he joined the college, the next day he would sit in the bhajan group and just sing because he's who he is. But then he found out there's an elaborate procedure. First you have to sing in front of some teachers, some coordinators, and they will see if you're fit enough. He was wondering, who are they to judge me, What do they know of me? But after they feel that you're worthy enough to sing, then you have to take permission from Swami. That is not a problem. Swami will naturally permit me, Swami knows who I am. And then you can sing, and when you sing actually in front of Swami, on the day you are singing your first bhajan, Swami better be positive towards you. Swami should not frown or make a face, because if that is done, then again the next chance will not come by. So anyway, he went for this qualifying exam and he sang. He thought, I will take a very complicated bhajan with lots of twists and turns and highs and lows and just bowl them over with my singing. They should have no doubts. That's what he did. But he just wasn't able to bowl them over. He got stumped because the coordinator told him that, see, what is this? This is a very Hindustani style bhajan and you're singing it in a Carnatic style. And the way you're pronouncing these Sanskrit and Hindi terms are so heavily accented. So also the way you're ending the bhajan, ending each line of the bhajan, instead of like fading out and giving a smooth landing, it's landing with a thud. There's a lot of practice that you need to do. Go practice and come back after 3-4 weeks. 3-4 weeks. He thought maybe in the evening he'll come back and try once more. So he thought, okay, it's fine. Fine, let me, what to do? And he went and he did not practice much because he felt, let me try with some other coordinator. This guy thinks no end of himself possibly. He doesn't know that each of these coordinators have been honed personally by Swami over 10, 15 years, and each one of them have got the boot, have gone up and have gone down, and they have gone through the whole thing. And it's with wisdom that they are telling all this. So he just thought, okay, after 3 weeks I'll go. After 3 weeks he went and the result was the same. The teacher told him that I don't see any improvement in you. The way you're, so loud and you're not having any kind of modulation in your voice, there's no control, you're just blaring out loudly. Why don't you go and talk to other singers, take tips from them, practice? And sent him back. Nikhil was very hurt. And in a few days' time, Swami was going to return from Vrindavan and he has not yet sung. And it doesn't look like he'll be getting the opportunity to sing. How could he go and ask any other singer? Which other singer can have a more glorious heritage than him? And he just couldn't swallow that thing about asking others. But he realized that he's not getting his chance. So that night he just prayed intensely to Swami, saying, Swami, my grandfather was like this, my great-grandfather was like this, my mother was like this, my aunt, my grandmother, everybody, Swami, all have sung for you. Why am I not getting to sing, Swami? Why am I not getting to sing? In fact, he might, it's like you go back home and naturally they'll ask him, you're a Swami student, so every day you sing or every day you sing 2 bhajans? That's what they'll ask, because everybody else in the family have sung for Swami. And what will he say? That 20 days over and I'm not even qualified. So he pleaded to Swami. And Swami came in his dream, and that night Swami comes in his dream and he tells him, do you know the sadhana that Sundaramma did? Do you have the idea about that? What sadhana are you doing? That was the dream, that's all. So he woke up in the morning, oh my God, so there's some sadhana to be done. I thought Sundarama just sang, my grandmother just sang. So he called up his mother and asked, Mom, what sadhana, you, aunt, grandmother, what sadhana have you been doing? Then she says, no, nothing, I don't know, we don't do any sadhana, it's all Swami's grace. Now, a true devotee of Swami or true devotee of God will always say like this. They'll never say that, I have done like this, that is why. Because a true devotee never feels that he has done something to deserve God's grace. He completely credits it to Swami. It's Swami's love. And for a true devotee, Swami will never say that, my grace has been on him. He says, no, it is your devotion. Greater than the Lord is the devotee's devotion. That's what God will say. And the devotee will say, he'll tell like this only, but actually it is only his grace, I have done nothing. So the thing is, it's wonderful humility battle, but it doesn't give you the answer. So Nikhil is saying, okay mom, all that is fine, but tell me some sadhana you would have done, right? It's all God's grace and all that, that's fine, but what's the sadhana you did? He says, I don't know. Possibly, your grandmother, she used to practice a lot. Every time she would practice. Because every time she felt, I'm singing for the Lord, I must give in my best effort. So, okay, this is a good practice. So finally, like in Kannada, there's a saying which goes as Shankadinda Bidrene Tirtha, which means from the conch shell, if it falls, it becomes Tirtham or sanctified water. It's the same water. If you give it in a glass, people won't respect it. You put it in a conch and drop it, then people will put their eye and drink. The same advice that his mother is giving now, okay, the same thing that his teacher had told, he did not accept. So he decided to go and practice, and every morning he would get up at 4 o'clock for 1 hour, he does Omkaram practice and keeps practicing, and after 10 days he gets an opportunity to again sing in front of the coordinator, and this time the coordinator is bold. He says, wow, you have, no, just a second. Before this thing happens, Swami has already come, and even though he has started his practice, he is actually feeling that urge to sing for Swami, so he decides that he will tell Swami directly and tell Swami, let me sing. If Swami tells you sing, no, we will stop. So he gets up and smiles at Swami when Swami is coming, and of course, Swami, you know who I am. Swami, I want to sing. Swami tells, sit down. So, oh my God, Swami did not understand. Swami, I am Sundarama's grandson. He tells Swami, you know who I am? You know who I am? I am Sundarama's grandson. Swami tells, I know that, you sit down. What are you trying to tell? You are trying to tell that you will get your connect with me simply because you are Sundarama's grandson? If that was the case, what qualification did Prahalada to have to get connect with me? Prahalada was Hiranyakashipu's son. Hiranyakashipu was the greatest demon there. If it goes by hereditary, Prahalada should not have come a kilometer close to me. Yet Prahalada was my dearest. The connection to God is not hereditary. It doesn't come from your lineage, it doesn't come from your connections, it doesn't come from... It's a very individual thing. And that is when Nikhil realized the mistake that he was doing. You can't ride on somebody else. You can't ride on somebody else's glory. You can't ride on your connections to get connected to God. That is why I said, like the SIM card, each connection is unique. Each number is unique. Each individual is unique. With this practice, yes, the coordinator was impressed. He told him to ask Swami. He asked Swami and Swami permitted him. He sang and there was no negative reaction. And that's how he became a bhajan singer. So Nikhil was happy. But it happens in our lives also. We learn lessons and we forget it over and over again. That's why Swami says that I am like Nataraja, the dance master. I alone know the pain of teaching you each step of the dance. Because even after I have taught you, you seem to forget the step. So the reason for forgetting may be different, may be varied. But the fact is that we forget. And Nikhil also forgot. His greatest ambition was to sing during the Akhanda Bhajan. Because he forgot the reason and he thought it's because Akhanda Bhajan has started with my family. Everybody is Akhanda Bhajan singer, I must also be an Akhanda Bhajan singer. Now for a singer, it is difficult to sing during Akhanda Bhajan as a student because there are students from all the campuses coming. There are students from all the institutions, from Bangalore Hospital, whoever is working, everybody comes. And many of them have been singers. So everybody wants the opportunity to sing. So only the best get to sing during Akhanda Bhajan. When the mics are on. When the mics are off, it's a different thing. when the mics are on, it's very difficult for the second and third run singers to get an opportunity. But Nikhil was pretty sure he'll get the opportunity. That's good, that's confidence. But the confidence had a wrong reason, and he felt, I will get because yes, I am coming from a family that has started the Akhanda Bhajan. Now it so happened on the Friday before the Akhanda Bhajan, Saturday is Akhanda Bhajan, on the Friday, when Nikhil had to sing his bhajan, the harmonium notes were placed, and for some reason he couldn't catch the pitch. He started off note, he started off key. And it was a kind of a confusion, and Swami looked at him and made a face as to what is this, you're not starting on key. And at the end of that bhajan session, he knew that he had put into jeopardy his opportunity of singing the next day, because Akhand Bhajan he has to sing. So he went to the teacher coordinator and said, so this is my final year. The previous year during 2005 Akhand Bhajan he had not got the opportunity to sing. So 2006, after which he'll be passing out of MBA. So he told the teacher coordinator that, sir, I would like to sing tomorrow, sir. Are you crazy? After what you did today, you want to sing tomorrow? But also, you see, there are so many people who are going to be coming, and you simply won't get the chance, because Swami will sit in the evening for an hour, in the morning for an hour, and there are already 20 singers, and that too you have to alternate between the gents and the ladies during Akhand Bhajan. So very tough for you to sing. That, sir, my family started Akhand Bhajan, sir. I better sing. Your family might have started the Akhand Bhajan, but do you want your family to be responsible for shutting it down also? I mean, I don't want you to sing, you can't sing. And as he went back, again, see, every problem, every difficult situation in our life is a messenger. It comes with a message. When we learn the message, the messenger goes away. But if we don't learn the messenger stays. If we forget the messenger comes again. That's why I feel every time we get irritated, every time we get upset, every time we get sad, it's a messenger. It's a messenger saying that this kind of a situation is irritating you, which means you have to work on this. And you guess what? Once you learn how to overcome that and don't get irritated with that situation won't come at all in your life. Actually, you are prepared. I am prepared. Let it come. Let somebody irritate me. I won't get irritated. That situation won't come only. It's very ironical. When you are not prepared, it comes. When you are prepared, it doesn't come. Just like our bank loans, Those who need the loan actually are not given loan because they don't have credit worthiness. Those who don't need the loan, they are hounded away calls. Sir, would you want a loan? Would you want a loan? Hey, I don't want loan. I'm having enough money. And that's why I want to give you the loan. It's like that, Even with life problems, it's like that. So it's always a message. Once we learn that message, the messenger goes away. And Nikhil, this time luckily, immediately he learned. He said, oh my God, again I did that mistake. Swami, I'm so sorry. He cried, he wept. And Swami, very sorry, Swami, nothing. Swami, I want, please, this is my opportunity. And that's it, yeah. Once you go individual, your individual connect, the way Swami does, it's so beautiful. The next day morning, he goes to the bhajan hall. And yes, it's full already. In fact, the teacher coordinator who plays the harmonium, he's sitting in the 13th line because 12 lines of singers are there. So he sits behind this teacher in the 14th line. He knows never he is going to get a chance. So 8 o'clock onwards he's there. 8:30 Swami comes into the bhajan hall. And even as Swami enters the bhajan hall and sits on the chair, he calls the person who is playing the tabla there and tells him something. And this person who is playing the tabla now gets up and walks across 12 lines and comes to this teacher coordinator who is playing the harmonium. And over the volume of the mics and speakers, he says loudly, he says, Swami is saying that from yesterday, the same old singers are singing. He wants some new people to sing. And he walks back, the tablist. And now this teacher coordinator looks all around. All are the same old faces. And he looks behind and Nikhil is sitting there. And says, Nikhil, next bhajan. And Nikhil just doesn't know what. See, with God, there is the most complicated situation which you feel you can't get out. He can unwind it in a matter of a moment. And when you think that nothing on earth can touch me, in one moment you can come crashing down. That is why, Shankaracharya says, Ma kuru dhana jana yavana garvam. Don't pride yourself of your jana, people, of your dhana, wealth, of your yavana, your youth. Why? Because harati nimeshat kala sarvam. In a matter of a moment, it can all go off. Just gone. 1 second. Everything, wealth can be gone, health can be gone. So, in the same way, just like in 1 second he can take away, in 1 second he can give it. And that's what happened to Nikhil Kaushik. And he sang that bhajan. And again he was crying. This time it was tears of joy. That's what God does to our lives. We are crying before we come to God, we are crying after we meet God. The thing is, one is the tears of sorrow, the other is the tears of joy. Converts it, and in the process transforms us, makes us pure gold, improves us, evolves us, elevates us. So, when Nikhil narrated this to me, I said, wow man, congrats. Finally that glorious family heritage, you are also there among them who sang Akhand Bhajan. He said, see, twice I have already done this mistake. Now don't simply pump me. It's just Swami's grace. He was not ready to fall the third time. It was not my intention to make him fall, but I just felt, wow, what an incident, what an experience. People, means we often think that different, means when we think of how we can get God, how we can connect to God, we start off with all the wrong things. We start looking external, as I said. We start looking at the towers, we start looking at the services. What we have to look in as at our own connect. Our own connect. Another incident that comes to mind is Professor Sudhir Bhaskar, who is currently at Radio Sai. He had the opportunity to walk behind Swami for some time, in the sense to help Swami collect letters and all that. So he was saying that once when they were walking, a person was trying to desperately hand over an envelope, and Swami took the envelope and gave it to Sir to hold. And when he was holding it, this man got up and came to Sir and told, be careful, 20 lakhs. There was a draft of 20 lakhs or a check of 20 lakhs, whatever. So he was trying to tell him that this is a very unique cover, not like every other letter. Don't just bundle it, keep it separate. That very moment, Swami turned around, asked for that cover, took it, just gave it back to that person and continued to walk during darshan. This person was sad and he tried to tell Sir that take it off, no problem, take it off. He just said, are you mad? Swami has given it back, you want me to take it? So he just didn't take it. In the same darshan, Swami walks straight to one person who is holding a brown cover, picks that up, again gives this to Sir and tells him, hey, keep this safely. So he keeps it in the pocket here, all other letters are bundled here. After darshan round, when they enter the interview room, Swami tells him, that cover that I gave you, open it. So he opens it, see what is there in that. He sees inside is a counterfoil from State Bank of India for 10 rupees. Somebody has made a donation of 10 rupees and that counterfoil he has sent to Swami. The counterfoil is the way you can claim that it is there if it doesn't come into your account. So he has given that to Swami. And Swami said every month on the day his salary comes, he forgoes one lunch and that lunch money he puts and donates it to Swami. And Swami said, this is more valuable than that. Swami actually physically didn't know what is that because he had told that it's a check for so many lakhs or whatever. But Swami told, this is more valuable than that. So the beautiful thing is after that, Swami said that it is with this money that I'm paying all your salaries. See, many people say, they ask me also, working for Swami, you must be getting less salary now. When they say less salary, they're talking about quantity of money. But Swami is talking about quality of money. Is your salary worth those people foregoing their lunch? And there is a thing about nobility of money, quality of money. It stands. There's a term called tainted money. In the same way, there's a term called noble money. And with noble money comes the good wishes and blessings. That is why gambling is a sin. Why is gambling a sin? Whether you gamble in a casino or whether you gamble in the stock market, it is a sin. You can of course invest in the stock market. You can put your money in a company and wait for 10 years to grow. That is called investment. But you put in today, sell that, buy tomorrow another share, sell that, try to make quick money. That's called gambling. I used to wonder, why is it wrong? Swami, I am ready to take the risk of putting my money in the stock market today, pulling out tomorrow, putting it again. That is the risk I am taking. And when I am lucky or I am doing good intelligent analysis, I am making money. First of all, why is it is like gambling only. But why is it bad? Why is gambling a sin? All those who are coming to gamble, no. They know that we are putting money and taking a risk. I was lucky, I won it. Why is it a sin, Swami? Why is gambling a sin? This was what I used to think. That is when I got to know about this concept of noble money and tainted money. You know what? The money that you win in the stock market daily trades is filled with the sorrow and pain of somebody who lost it. Just like if you lose in the stock market, oh my God, my life savings, oh God, I can't do my daughter's marriage, I can't do this, oh God, I'm gone. All that sorrow gets into that money. Because that's gambling money. The same thing happens in gambling also. You are winning, but at the cost of somebody else losing. The tears, the pain, the sorrow, the frustration, all that enters that money and comes. And tainted money has a way of transmitting that taint. Just like noble money has a way of transmitting that nobility. So the note, paper currency is nothing. What it carries is the blessings, the good wishes. And that shows in the quality of my life. Maybe not in the quantity of my life, but in the quality of my life. I remember this incident because, even you can't get your connect with Swami with your money also. You can't say that I am got this much. And so therefore, you have to be very, very careful. The moment you get a thought that, I am doing this for Swami, I donated this for Swami, I did this. Because very sadly, there is no need to name people, but we come across people who say this also. That is what I did for Swami. Oh, don't do that. It's an opportunity that Swami gave. Because that money who gave? Recently I came across a talk given by Isaac Tigret, who built the super specialty hospital in Parthi. And yes, in that talk, in the Institute auditorium to the students, he is revealing, he's saying that when Swami picked him to build the hospital, he was wondering how to do it. He then said, Swami, I will sell my shares in Hard Rock Cafe and that money I will put into the hospital. Swami said, yeah, do that, but not now. Wait, I will tell you when to sell. And after a few months, Swami said, now you sell. And he himself has confessed that in that span, 54 million which he held had grown to 108 million. And Swami said, now you give the 54. Now, is that his money? Who made it? 54, it would have gone down to 20, right? 54 to 108. He still had it 54. In that sense, who gives? Who takes? This is what he said. I gave nothing. It's Swami who gave and gave me the opportunity to take credit for it. That's how it is. So, when it is he who is giving everything, who are we to claim? Yeah, money is a very direct form. But in many other subtle ways, we do this kind of boasting. We think we are singing for Swami. We are offering our songs to Swami. We are offering our talents to Swami. Who has given them? Talents, abilities, wealth, any kind of resource that we have is God's own gift to us. And what we do with that is our gift to God. That's all. Tera tujhko arpan, it is said. We offer back to Him what we have as ours. So for that, what matters then? So all this doesn't matter at all. That is why you see, in Kulwant Hall, we would have seen a Bharat Ratna singing songs. We have seen students singing songs. There is a huge difference between the quality of singing. Yet Swami listens to both. Because he is not concerned with the talent. That is what he has given. I have given this much talent here, I have given this much less here. But how well they have utilized the talent? How much effort they have put? What is the love with which they offer? That's all matters. We humans judge by the results being produced. God judges only by the efforts being put in. And so too it is when we are trying to develop the connect. One of my classmates, he got the opportunity to, his name is Harish, he got the opportunity to push Swami's wheelchair for about 3 years, 4 years. And during those years, he says that Everybody thinks that it was a great blessing conferred on him. He says, but it was also a very, very, very tough challenge. Not to get enveloped by the Maya. You think Swami doesn't know this, Swami knows this, because you see Swami in such a human scenario. All of us are in that sense lucky that in those glimpses when he shows divine, we see him, that's it. And that is what we carry. But in day to day, Swami says, hey, who is this person? What is that? I forgot. What was his name? Where he came from? What is this puri? What is that sabji there? What was that? Oh, Swami is forgetting. Swami doesn't know. When you every day lead like that, it's a challenge. In fact, when one of the devotees who used to serve Swami asked, Swami, what is the sadhana I should do? Swami said, the greatest sadhana you can do is remind yourself every moment that Swami is God. Who Swami is? Remind yourself of that. Because you'll forget it. You'll forget it. And even as I say that we forget it, let us not think that Maya is some terrible thing. It's an evil witch who is coming and blocking me from Swami. No, Maya is the beautiful goddess who gives us the opportunity to interact with Swami. If there's no Maya, there's no conversation with Swami. If there's no Maya, there's no separation from Swami. No separation meaning I don't feel I'm a devotee, he's Swami. Then there's no joy. Possibly it's a very boring life. That's why Swami said, I separated myself from myself so that I can love myself. Created Maya so that there's this joy of loving. Otherwise, what is there? I'm all alone, there's nothing else. Must have been pretty boring for God, I feel. That's why he separated himself so that he can love. So Maya actually gives us the opportunity to beautifully interact with God. Maya gives us chance for bhakti. Maya gives us chance for shakti, mukti, yukti, everything. So Maya is not terrible, but he said that it is so difficult. It is so difficult. And he says once when he was troubled so much, he told Swami, I have to confess something to you in a very private moment. And Swami said, what? He said, Swami, I don't think I have faith in you, Swami. I had faith in you, but now I don't have faith. My faith shakes, Swami, and I don't think every moment I know that you are God. Most of the time I think you're like any one of us only. I don't think I have faith, Swami. Swami said, no problem if you don't have faith. Do you love me? I said, yes, Swami. That is it. I love you, Swami. I love you so much. I don't have faith, but I love you. That's enough. If you love me, that's enough. If you love me, you deserve me. That's all. So, many of us think that, I can't connect to Swami. And we look up to other people, other things. He's great, huh? Swami comes daily in his dream. That's wonderful. That's terrific to get inspired from. Doesn't mean that you go and tell him that, let me make calls through your SIM card. He may allow 1 or 2 calls, but after that, he will not. Why should he get billed for your calls? Develop your own SIM card. That's not a substitute. Oh, he's got 100 interviews from Swami. Doesn't matter. Because what Swami says is, if you love me, you deserve me. We don't give it a chance at all because we don't have patience. We want everything instantly, fast, quick. That's the world, no, that is it. Fast, easiest, fastest, quickest, cheapest way. I'll do it. I have a problem, what to do? In his house, Vibhuti comes, go ask him. Easiest it is, no? Who will spend hours waiting for Swami reply, no sleep, no food at night, pine for him, crave for him, oh, so tough it is. Simply go and ask him. If you leave a letter at his place, Swami, see, though I'm comparing this to the telephone network and SIM card, unlike the telephone networks, God doesn't have areas of no coverage. There are no areas where you can't say, he's under greater coverage, I'm in no coverage. That's where the metaphor with the telephone connection ends. God's coverage is throughout the universe. Swami himself has said that. Pattamalo unna, gutta mida unna, natteti unna, whether you're in the ocean, whether you're in the mountain top, whether you're anywhere, Swami will not, this Satya Sai of Prashanti will not leave you, Swami has said. In a poem, Telugu poem. So his coverage is everywhere. But we need to have that patience and intensity and pining to connect. And as Swami said, if you love me, it's enough. We all think we love Swami. One Swami had also asked, do you love Swami or do you like Swami? No, I like an ice cream. I don't love an ice cream. So do I love Swami or do I like Swami? How do we know we love Swami? That is through our actions, That comes through our thought, our words and our deeds. Every time I think of something, that's a very advanced stage. Forget thinking, because we can't control our thoughts. But we have at least better control on our words. Even greater control on our deeds. Swami sometimes says bad thoughts will come. Swami says that sometimes bad thoughts will come. Just ensure that you don't speak those bad thoughts. Even if you happen to speak, just ensure you don't act upon them. In the same way, if we love Swami, shouldn't we think, speak and act upon things that are dear to him? I should do things that are dear to Swami, that's the easiest. And as I keep doing things that are dear to him, I should speak things only that are dear to him. And as time progresses, I should also have thoughts only of those things that are dear to him. Other thoughts should not even have a space. A thought is a very subtle level. Little more better level is a speech. Easiest level is actions. At least can I start like that? Can I ensure that everything that I do is something that if Swami is watching, he would be proud of. Because whether we believe it or not, whether we accept it or not, he is watching. Not only our acts. I remember one more classmate of mine, a little humorous incident. He was daily getting interactions with Swami. And he would sneak out. He had a room, his parents' room. He would sneak out, go there against the rules. See, he would be coming early because Swami was speaking daily to him and he's coming to the ashram. But he would, when Swami goes to interview room, he'll sneak out and go and watch TV in that room. He'll watch TV in that room. And one day Swami called him for an interview and Swami said, I know, this is what you watched. And Swami said, behind you, you forgot. You saw who is there, you forgot that I'm watching. The next time this guy went to watch the television, he sees that there's a calendar of Swami and Swami sitting and watching. But you know what this guy does? He takes the calendar, folds it, keeps it and then watches the TV. That's a different story, but yeah, Swami is watching. He's watching every act we do. He's watching every word we speak. He's watching every thought that comes. So can we progress? Can we do, speak and think of only those that are dear to him? But what is dear to him? What is dear to him? First, to do, to speak and to think what is dear to him, first we must know what is dear to him. And to know what is dear to him, I feel that is where Satya Sai Avatar becomes so special, because we have got his own discourses, his own written works. I don't think any other avatar's works have been preserved like this. It is only commentaries by other people. It is commentaries by other saints possibly. Ramayana is Goswami Tulsidas, possibly Valmiki, but that's the closest. But today we have Ramakatha Rasa Vahini, an autobiographical account. I feel that's what it is. Rama writing about Rama, because you will see such revelations in Ramakatha Rasa Vahini that's not there in Valmiki Ramayana. In fact, T.G. Krishnamurti sir, the former state president of Tamil Nadu, had this opportunity of staying with Swami for a few months in Swami's room. That is when they would discuss the Ramayana. And when Swami said some things, he said, but Swami, Valmiki says that it is like this. And Swami said, what does Valmiki know? I am telling you, this is what happened. He didn't see this. This is the thing. And Swami writes of how Rama and Sita make an agreement that this is the time. In fact, it is often believed that Kaikeyi banished Rama. And Swami says Kaikeyi didn't banish. She loved Rama more than Kausalya. That Valmiki also records that Kaikeyi loves Rama more than Kausalya. Then how come, just imagine, there are mothers here, fathers here, you have loved your children. Overnight, can a maid servant come and change your mind about the love you have for your child? Is it possible logically? Because Valmiki himself writes that Kaikeyi loves Rama more than Kausalya loves Rama. And Manthara comes and does this. Okay, suppose she did that also. Manthara came and poisoned Kaikeyi's mind. After Rama is banished, Kaikeyi is in the first. You can read this in Valmiki Ramayana. He is in the front, she goes along with Bharata to Rama, falling at Rama's feet, and Rama says, Mother, you shouldn't fall at my feet. She is in tears. She says, Rama, please come back. Rama, please come back. What? Is she so fickle? Swami says that Rama went to Kaikeyi and said, Mother, you love me the most. So I know that only you will be capable of doing this to me. Are you ready? She says, I'll do anything for you, Rama. Anything, even if it involves great sacrifice. She says, whole kingdom if needed, I'll give up for your sake. She says, mother, I'm asking for something more valuable. What? Your self-respect, your self-esteem. People will spit on you. She says, no problem, Rama, for your sake I'll do. Then listen, mom, I didn't come to rule Ayodhya and have fun here. I came to kill Ravana. And I can't kill Ravana sitting here. Please banish me to the forest. There's a drama that has to play out. I have to go and I have to travel thousands of kilometers. I have to go to Lanka there and kill him and come. Can you do this? How will I do this? You remember your two boons. Ask one that I should be sent away. Rama, if you're sent away, this kingdom will be in ruin. Second boon, tell Bharata should be made king. Because if you don't ask for that, Bharata will never become king. She said, I'll do it. That's why after having done it, she did it only because Rama wants it. That's why she goes in the front and says, Rama, please come back. Please come back, Rama. Please come back. I did what you said, but now I want you to come back. That's my desire. And then Rama says, no, it's done. Father has told I can't. And he plays his drama and he goes. Where do we get these insights? In the same way Swami has given. We have got, sometimes it so happens that when we read through Sathya Sai Speaks, the text that is there, some have been missed. After all, it is something that a person has transcribed. You see the magic of listening to Swami's discourse. After Swami's discourse, it had actually happened. In every chemistry class, there is a Nageshwar Rao sir in our chemistry department. He would come and ask 20 of us seated in the chemistry class, what did Swami tell in the discourse yesterday? This boy would get up and tell something. So Swami was saying about the importance of Satya and Dharma. What did Swami tell in the discourse yesterday? This next guy will get up and say, the importance of bhajan singing, that's what I learned. This fellow is possibly a bhajan singer. What did Swami say in yesterday's discourse? Whatever happens, even if you can't help others, just don't hurt. That's enough. That's what Swami said. At the end of it, you would wonder whether all the 20 guys sat in the same discourse or in different discourses. What is this? All of you attended same discourse or each one was giving different messages. That's how Swami teaches. Because there are different people with different needs. And the way he delivers the discourse, according to each person's need, they absorb it. What a tailor-made, personalized class it is. That's why each discourse is different for each one. And now if I hear the discourse and put it down as Sathya Sai Speaks, it's bound to be colored by my perception and my needs. What I am going through, that is what I will emphasize on. That is why, books, possibly Ramayana, that is Ramayana through Tulsidas' eyes. That is Ramayana through Valmiki's eyes. We are lucky to have got Ramkatha Rasavahini. Just imagine Swami's own discourses are available. In public domain, on Radio Sai, I think at least 700 to 750 are available. You can directly listen and directly get the message. When that is available, why do we still want somebody else? Why do we try to connect? No, I'm not. Many times it happens. A good speaker is often considered as a substitute for Swami. I have seen people asking me why intellectual doubts, okay, but if they ask me solutions to their spiritual life, I ask, why are you asking me? Ask Swami, no? No, you ask Swami. Why should I ask Swami? You ask Swami. Don't you have faith? No, I don't have faith. Do you love Swami? That's enough. And that's not what I'm saying. That's what Swami has said. If you love me, you deserve me. You just give a chance. You just try. Because dear brothers and sisters, what matters is not what we accomplish, but what matters is how much effort we put in. How much effort we put in. In Kodaikanal, in the year 2005 or 2006, I don't remember exactly, I think 2005, Swami was, Swami was walking with support. He had this fall, and every time he had to walk from his chair to his room or anywhere, he would take the support of one of the students. This was an additional chance that had got created. Kodaikanal, every era, every year, some new things happen. Some old chances are dropped away, some new chances get created. So now that Swami was on this wheelchair sofa, the picnics, outings, the walks in the woods, that chance was over. But this new chance had got created now, where you can hold Swami's hand and walk. Everywhere that Swami walks, you can hold his hand and walk. What a beautiful opportunity. And so, at that time, one day when Swami got up, there was this boy holding Swami's hand and Swami was holding his hand and walking. And as Swami is walking, he looks at all the other people who are seated and he says, lucky fellow, no? Swami holding Swami's hand. And everybody, yes, Swami, he's so lucky. Because he's holding Swami's hand. And Swami then said, but holding Swami's hand is not important. Not important? Swami, all our life, we are spending and struggling to hold your hand, to touch your feet, to talk to you. And you say it's not important. Swami, that is what we have considered as the most important thing in our life. And you saying it's not important. This is what Swami said. But he said holding hand is not important. And then Swami added, he said, pining to hold Swami's hand, very important. Holding the hand is not important, but wanting to hold is important. Touching his feet is not important, but pining to touch his feet is important. Because by just touching the feet without pining, nothing will happen. But pining to hold it, even without actually holding it, all the benefit comes. And it is there, recorded in the Satyam Shivam Sundaram also. My favorite episode of Krishnamurti. Please do read it. In the first Satyam Shivam Sundaram it comes. About how he pined to look at Swami's feet. Look at Swami's feet. In the 1940s, when everybody would touch his feet 100 times a day. And he didn't get the opportunity to look at his feet. Finally, he got the ultimate merger without even looking at Swami's feet. And Swami said that is because of his pining that the river merged into the ocean. Without even looking at Swami's feet, he got everything. How many of us have looked at Swami's feet, touched Swami's feet also if we are lucky? What has happened? It is not in holding his hand. It is not in touching his feet. It is not in the number of interviews we got. It is not even in the fact whether we saw him physically or not. What matters is, do we pine to hold his hand? Do we pine to touch his feet? Do we pine to see him? Whether we see him or not, do we pine to see him? That is what love is. Love is pining. Love is pining. In fact, we have been doing a satsang on the Radio Sai every Thursday between 12:30 to 2. Premanush and myself on the Ramkatha Rasa Vahini. That's why a lot of Ramayana seeps into my talks. But in the Ramayana towards the end, that's so beautiful. Rama hosts during the coronation, he hosts all those who have come from Lanka and Kishkinda, Sugriva, Vibhishna, for 6 months in Ayodhya. That is how God gives. That's how God gives. There's nothing like sacrificing for God. Whatever you give, you get back 100-fold. Just imagine those monkeys hosted Rama for 6 months among boulders and trees. And in return, they're getting 6 months of hosting in the kingdom of Ayodhya, in golden palaces. That's how everything is given back 100-fold with the Lord. There's nothing like you're sacrificing for Lord. It's a myth. So after that, he tells, Rama tells, it's there in the Ramkatha Rasa Vahini, so beautiful. Only God can say this. Rama says, all of you return to your kingdoms. I love you all more than everything else. Only God can love everyone more than everything else. Each one of us feel that Swami loves me so much. That is the truth. Because his love alone can be equal on all, just like the sunshine falls on all. Yeah, whether we open the doors and windows, that is left to us. But if we open the doors and windows, sunshine will come into ours also. Instead of that, we abandon the house and tell, let us go to another house where the door and window is open. Because he is getting sunshine. No, you will also open the doors and windows. Rama says, go back to your kingdoms. I will be there with you, in you, around you, above you. Keep me in your thoughts. And you will reach the level of Sarupyam. Sarupyam, they say there are 4 stages. Salokyam, Samipyam, Sarupyam, Sayujyam. Salokyam meaning being in the same world as God. Samipyam means in that world being close to God. Sarupyam meaning taking on the form of God. Sayujyam meaning there is no difference between you and God. In fact, Swami gives the example of Bharata. Bharata, once Rama left, he leaves the kingdom and sits at Nandigrama thinking of Rama. And he's so much thinking of Rama that he's doing everything that Rama does. He's doing everything that Rama does. So at the end, when Rama comes back, thin and weak with matted hair and all that, that's how Bharata is also looking. In fact, Swami says when they're entering the capital, people don't know whose feet to fall at. Because both are looking same. And Bharata realizes that this is happening, and so he starts pouring flowers at the feet of Rama so that people can identify who is Rama. That is Sarupya. Does it mean we will start looking like Swami? Not in the physical sense. But what would happen to people in Swami's presence will happen in our presence also if we lead a life like how Swami led his life. In Swami's presence, tears of sorrow would become tears of joy. In Swami's presence, we would forget everything and just become happy for no reason. Even though some of us, the moment Swami goes in and the music stops, we get back to our world and again get back our worries. In that moment when we are in his presence, we forget everything. And the same thing will happen, and that is why Swami in a letter has written to Charles Penn years ago that a time will come when my darshan will pour forth through each and every one of you. That is possibly the time Swami is referring to when we have to evolve from Salokyam, living in the same world as Swami, Samipyam, living in Prashantilyam, to Sarupyam, living the life of Swami. And that is also the way we develop our own connect with Swami. Because after that, once we develop that connect, it's only a matter of time before we reach Sayujyam. That is oneness with Swami. There is no difference between Swami and us. The Lord separated himself from himself to love himself. And when that love becomes pure, selfless and complete, the separation is gone and the unity comes back again. That's all is the cycle, the drama of life and death, the drama of creation and destruction. That's all it is. It's just for fun. But if we want to enjoy and take part in that fun, yes, we separate ourselves to love ourselves, and we have to learn to love selflessly and purely to become one with ourselves again. I would like to conclude with a prayer to Swami. Swami, all the different, whether it's people, objects, like you said, they are all like the finger that point out to the moon. That's what the mother does to the child. See, that is the moon. The finger is an aid to help to look at the moon. Once you see the moon, you don't need the finger. But Swami, in our ignorance, in our foolishness, sometimes we let go of the moon and catch the finger, Swami. Every time if somebody asks where is the moon, we say this is the moon. This is not the moon. And that is how foolish we would be if we don't develop our own SIM card, our own direct connect with God. If we don't see Ramachandra, that's how Swami writes in Ramakatha Rasavayini. That is the moon. Rama is compared to the moon. Ramachandra, that's why he is called. Instead of Ramachandra, let us not get stuck with the finger, pointing fingers. That's what we are doing. Instead of the moon, we are pointing fingers. Swami, we pray to you that we pine for you, we long for you, we seek you, we grow in our love for you every moment of our lives, achieve that connect with you directly, and finally achieve that merger with you. Thank you. Jai Sai Ram.